Welcome back to Making the Jump podcast, where we chat all things business, entrepreneurship and property. I'm Kafilat.
And I'm Rebecca, and we're here to journey with you as you make the jump into something you absolutely love. Hello everybody, welcome back to Making the Jump with me, Rebecca.
And me, Kafilat.
We're excited today. We've got some lovely guests with us. We've got John and Jade Reynolds.
Woo!
Hello guys, how you doing?
Nice to have you both. So
Yes.
these guys, for the listeners, are very good friends of mine and my husband. John and I have actually been colleagues together. We worked together over the last couple of years, and Jade and I have become good friends, and we get lots of lovely food when we go round to their house, and we're usually there for a minimum of 5 hours. And in that time, we do not stop talking. It's so nice to do life with these guys and hear what they're up to. And they've both got amazing stories and big, bright futures ahead of them. So we thought we would just get them on the show to chat a little bit more about what they've been up to and what fired them up to make the jump.
Yes.
So, Kafilat, do you want to kick off?
Yes. So I'm excited to chat to you guys. Because you guys are content creators at the moment, but want to rewind a little bit before the content creation days. So if we start with John first, what's your background? What have you done before?
Background was in like youth work, really, so Christian youth ministry. I went to Bible college, got my degree there. That's actually where we met. And then from that, I went straight into youth work. I've worked for 3 different churches over the last sort of 10 or 11 years since university. And then in March, just gone, so 11 months ago, 10 months ago or so, decided to make the jump into self-employment and full-time content creation.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yes, and for myself, I've done lots of little bits really. I've not worked for a few years because I've got 2 young children, so I've been a stay-at-home mum. But before then, I probably did charity work and worked for a few different things like that. Usually part-time because I'm a wheelchair user, and so all the health issues related to that means sometimes it can be hard for me to work full-time. So, and now I've kind of been dragged on the journey of content creation with you, haven't I, John?
Yes.
Kind of
forced into colleague status on the grounds of marriage.
Yeah. Definitely.
So you touched on that, and I know some of your content is around the fact that you're a wheelchair user and what it's like to be an interabled couple. Would you be able to share a little bit of that journey, maybe starting with how you met and maybe a little bit of your personal lives? Take us on that journey with us.
Yeah, so met at university, didn't we?
We did, yeah. I guess we should probably start from when I became paralysed. As in, I became paralysed when I was 12 years old from a very rare condition called acute transverse myelitis. So a bit of a mouthful. And from then on, really, I've been a wheelchair user. We met at Bible college. I was 22, I think, at the time, 21 when we met. Maybe.
Yeah, so
I went a bit later.
Yeah, early 20s. And we didn't start dating until I'd left uni. So Jade was in her final year, but we knew each other, sort of had a good friendship, and then kind of started dating once I'd left. And I think a lot of that, even regarding, I guess, being an interabled couple, a lot of that was people have sort of said, like, because we were on a dating podcast actually that was talking about what it's like to be in a romantic relationship, and within that I think I said, like, it wasn't really any different in terms of, like, I think every relationship I've ever been in, you're kind of like, let's just see how hard this is going to be. And that's true if you can walk or you can't. And I've had a lot more high maintenance girlfriends in the past than Jade, and a lot more demanding ones as well. So I think, like, it was quite, I think because you're so confident in your disability, it was quite natural and intuitive for me as well, because either it was quite obvious, I would say, or where it wasn't, maybe you're really good at giving that kind of, this is how you want to do that, or this is how my wheelchair works, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I've always been happy for people to ask me, questions about my disability, and because I think I'd be the same. Like if I didn't have this and I saw someone in a wheelchair, I think it's only natural to be a bit curious.
And with regards to content creation, that's kind of, it's a whole mixture really of family life. Some of the content we do is directly related to disability. Some of it's kind of a bit of dark humor or a bit of teasing on the back of that. A lot of those ideas come from Jade herself. Some of it is a bit more educational, so it's like, how can she drive because we've got an adapted car, or what was it like when you were in a relationship, how has she been able to have kids, those kind of conversations that people ask, sometimes bordering on nosy, but also you recognize that when you're doing social media, you put yourself out there, so it's that fine line between not wanting it to necessarily be warts and all, whether you're sharing stories about your relationship or stories about your children and things. You're trying to make sure that there's always a reason. For me, it's like, is it entertaining or educational? It can't just solely be about attention. It can't solely be like, hello again, I just want some love right now. Notice me. It's got to be like, is this funny? Is this the kind of story you tell your friends off camera? And therefore, is it the kind of thing that works on camera? And still works,
How have people received you on social media?
Yeah, almost unanimously, like really, really well. Like I think it's interesting because we've got our biggest platform is TikTok, then Facebook, then Instagram. But I would say Facebook, it's very difficult because there's a real generational divide. I would say, between different social media platforms. TikTok are almost unanimously, not always, but almost just lovely, and even will ask things in a different way, like, hey, no hate, but how can she drive if she can't walk? Those kind of things where you're like, it might be a little bit nosy sometimes, but it's still framed in a way that's like, I'm just wondering, and it's got quite respectful almost always. Whereas Facebook, and it's usually people who are more than old enough to know better, and things, people older than us, like who are can just be so rude sometimes and things, or like people, I think particularly people who have a different, I don't necessarily understand what it is to be a content creator, so maybe just see influencers as people who are just trying to get you to buy rubbish products or whatever, rather than people who actually create content that might have some level of meaning or education or
just entertainment.
Exactly. And so it's like, on Facebook, we're more likely to get like, another family who just lives online and shares everything, and it's like, I probably do 1-2 minute video a day. Like, I've got a lot bigger life than kind of just this little funny story, and things. But it's more likely to be that way inclined. But most of the time, I'd say, like, we've had very, very little hate, really.
That's
only
amazing.
When a video gets really big, does that happen, and that's kind of just the ratio and inevitability of, like, if enough people see it, you'll always get a few people who don't like what they see.
No, that's amazing. But what would you say you went from like being a youth worker and that sort of stuff? Why content creation? What made you make the jump into content creation?
It was never really anything I set out to do. I've always enjoyed, like, entertaining or being silly or acting or telling funny stories.
And you've done stand-up comedy, haven't you, before?
So when I was at uni, like, tried a little bit of stand-up and things, and it was all right. Like, it's weird, stand-up. So like, social media and content stuff is so much easier because it's just not a live audience. The second you mess anything up, like, you just retake it. And even as you're telling something, sometimes you realise, that would be a funny line, so you just go back and do it again. Whereas on stage, it kind of, the beauty of it is when it works, it's like nothing else. When you feel like the room is all with you and they're laughing, like, you don't get that immediate response with social media. But the nice thing about social media is you can hide behind a video that doesn't do well, just people don't really see it. If I put it out there and it gets 5,000 views rather than 5 million. Well, that's okay. Only 5,000 people saw it, which is okay. Like, they won't even remember. And even then, sometimes they still don't mind it, or they still quite like it. It's just doesn't end up going as big as some of the others. Whereas, like, and even saying that now, like 5,000 being like a low thing. If I had 5,000 people in a room and I was doing stand up, I would just feel sick.
Exactly.
So it's that weird world of like online where
I
it
know.
works. But I basically just told a funny story about my son one day when we got back from church, and how just a bit of confusion. He really wanted to be an author, and so he wrote down. That's what he was telling me at the time. And so he writes down this story that I basically couldn't read because he was about 4 at the time, 5 at the time, and all the words were like merged together.
Like Cinderella or something.
It was a retelling of Cinderella. So I was like, once upon Tim, Cinderella was spelt with an S, like she'd been really naughty. And so I was just struggling to read it. As it went on, it all merged, and then he was getting more and more cross with me. It's this whole page of A4, and so I was being like, I'm really trying, darling, but the B's were D's, and there were no spaces between the words, and I was just like, I'm trying, sweetheart. And he was like, oh, Daddy, it says this, and he was telling me every time. And Jade was in another room, so she could hear his retelling and explanation of the whole story.
Yeah.
So then he goes, so I'm going to take it to Mummy. You are really annoying me, Daddy. Goes through, and obviously Jade has heard the whole story now from his behalf, so she can then read it perfectly. So he then comes back in and he goes, Daddy, Mummy is a much better reader than you. You really do need to work on your reading. Like he was like giving me like it was a teacher, like with a red pen, like giving me a grade. And so I just told that on Instagram just to friends and family, because I didn't have any social media like creator pages or anything. It's just like my personal account. And it probably got about 10 or 15 DMs compared to like maybe usually 2 or 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this one's gone down well. I was on TikTok because I was a youth pastor anyway, so I just thought I'm just going to repurpose it and chuck it over on TikTok. And it got about 30 or 40 or 50,000 views, and I had about 300 followers at the time. We then told a story of our first date, and I won't tell that whole story, but essentially we went to the cinema and they didn't have very good disabled access, so I had to end up carrying Jade up a flight of stairs to our cinema screen. And it's quite a funny story, but that one, I think about a month after sharing the story of Elijah, I shared that one. And that one, I think, got a few million, got like 2.5 million views. And suddenly we had like 40, 50,000 followers, and it just kept climbing.
How that worked on, sorry to interject, but
no.
is that the algorithm picking up the fact that people liked your previous video?
Possibly, yeah. So the algorithm,
the mysterious algorithm, isn't it?
Every different social media has a thing where you're like, oh, I'm not sure, and you'll hear people giving advice on don't use too many hashtags, or make sure you use at least 10 hashtags, or you just don't know. And I think it changes all the time. I think there seems to be something in most having a catchy hook at the start of something. So you won't believe what my son said the other day, or this was my first date with a wheelchair user. Like those, I think, were the things I started with. And I think for most people, you're interested to hear that. Like, I think the way I try to think about it is if I was on a table of 10 of my friends and things, and everyone's sort of having a conversation, and they overheard me saying it to just you guys, would a few of them be like, I'm really annoyed, I kind of want to listen, what was that? And things like, I want to hear more of that. Whereas there are other stories, and it's weird because I think it's stuff I've had to learn, because when you're chatting like this, unless the story is dreadful and long-winded and badly told, you're going to listen anyway. But that doesn't mean you wouldn't, if you were watching that same story on social media, go, nah, and scroll past, because there's like the whole etiquette of just being socially polite. So when you're like this, you listen. So I think that was a bit of a journey. But I think the algorithm, basically, if you've got a good hook, and the more people who watch it and interact and comment and things, means the more it keeps getting sent out there. Exactly. So that basically snowballed, and it got to a stage where I was like, wow, I've got like 50, 60, 70, 80,000 followers on this platform. And it was really weird, but one thing that was interesting is it didn't follow across to other platforms at all. Even if I was like, please follow me on Instagram or whatever in the comments, or did a live or whatever, very few people do. It wasn't until a video also did well on Instagram, or a video also did well on Facebook, that they organically started to grow. So it's definitely, it's definitely, like learning curves and things with all of it, I think. But it then got to a stage where I was still working for the church and doing this as well. And we had Vimto reach out to us. So they're like, if you don't know, I don't know where your listeners are from, and I think Vimto's quite all
It's
over the place
global.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're listening in a place and you've never heard of Vimto, it's basically a juice squash drink.
Yes.
And they got in touch with us and just said, "What were your rates for doing like a brand deal?"
Mhm.
And I think
didn't
that
have a clue,
was,
did we? We were like, what? What do we say?
I think starting in, I think I started it in April 2022, and I think this was.
It was that summer, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that was in the summer that they
That's quite early
they
on.
reached out. Yeah, because it went quite big quite quickly, but I just had
Yeah.
no idea. So I remember reaching out to my uncle, and also the guy who worked with them was really kind and sort of had a little chat with me because he does content creation as well.
Mhm.
And I just said, look, I can't remember what we're on. I want to say about maybe 100K around the time.
Yeah.
Money here?
No, I wish.
No followers.
So I think we're on about 100,000 followers on TikTok at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And he said, I reckon you could probably charge them £500 a video. And I was like, nice, okay. And he said, you might want to even say, do you want to do 3 for £12.50? So I was like, okay, like I haven't lost anything, like, because you just have no idea. Like, I remember speaking to people, again, the creativity plan that TikTok have to encourage
people to create content.
Has changed again now. But at the time, you used to get around £20 per million views from TikTok. So,
which isn't a lot.
Really? That's rubbish.
So very, very, very little. And we had the odd month where it was like nice still. And now that was any video of any length as well.
Yeah.
So we did have a few videos that were like 5 seconds long that suddenly got about 10 million views. And you're like, oh, nice. Like, and things. So it's now different. You can get a lot more than that per million views, but they now only pay for videos that are 1 minute longer, 1 minute or longer.
Okay.
So you can't do loads of shorter ones. So you won't get paid anything if it's short, but obviously people are more likely to watch it and it might boost your account, but you can get paid a little bit more now. So they change these things all the time. But at the time I remember thinking, well, if I'm getting 20 quid per million views, like, I mean, I don't know what to charge them. Like before they said, I was like, I mean, even £100 would be lovely just for one video and things like.
Absolutely.
So we chucked out there 3 videos for £12.50, and they said yes, and we were like, oh my word!
Couldn't believe it, could you?
Wow.
It's like, whoa, this
like
is
that's
amazing.
amazing.
Like a really quick video, it wasn't hard to do, and you're like, that's so easy.
Yeah. And so like, I think. And as it's gone on, it really varies in terms of I guess what people are willing to pay, and it depends on the brand as well. We have this all the time where we had one. It's always hard when you're speaking direct figures, but we've now had. I'd now say that most of the time, the very very top we've ever earned has been £4,000 for one video.
But we've literally just one video.
Yeah, for one video.
Wow.
But most of the time, that was once. We've had 3,200 once, and the rest have been around 2 or less. So around the time then we were getting, I think we had roughly 2 grand as like kind of, if it was a decent brand, we had, and I might not name them even just in case, but they were basically a well-known, here's your ingredients food company that you could order once a month from. And they wouldn't pay us more than £4.50. So we were like,
but we still did it because we were like, well, we actually do like that kind of thing, and so they give us the ingredients for free and then also pay us some money. So it's like, well, we're still getting in some ways a good deal.
And so it's always hard with these kind of things, I think. And I guess it's true for everyone in business and who's self-employed, where you might have your general rate and stuff, and sometimes people surprise you and they'll say, like, I don't know, look, I urgently need this and I'm willing to pay you more than you're usually being paid. And you're like, nice. And other times people really lowball you, but you need the business and stuff. And and I guess it's also at the time where, like, whilst whilst they aren't a small company, and we were probably getting sometimes around 5 times that amount from people of a similar stature of like brand,
Yeah.
you're also like, the weird thing about content creation is that like that video took us 45 minutes to cook and film, probably an hour or so to edit, and I think they wanted a few changes or whatever, but probably in total it's probably about 3 hours. And so like I've never been in any kind of job where they'd be like £150 an hour.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time there's the flip side of it where like you can get like we said, we probably took 2 hours, the 4 grams one.
Yeah.
But at the same time, 99% of what I do isn't branded, isn't paid at all. It's literally just growing your platform where I can spend 2 hours doing a video one day and you earn nothing.
Yeah.
And that's probably most of
very little
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or you earn like £5 from it or something. So it's a really weird world where you're like, it's
all or nothing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really unpredictable. Like you never know when a video's going to go big or if it's not. And trial and error.
That's it.
This is so fascinating to hear. And as you both know, me and Kafilat are on our journey to become entrepreneurs. We both like property, whether it's finding property and selling property deals or hosting through Airbnb. And one of the things we've realised is, one, podcasts can be incredibly helpful for people that want to make the jump. And we wanted to expand this, not just for people in property or thinking about going into it, but people that are making any jump in life, something to something. So we just wondered what sorts of emotions, what sorts of like things were you considering, because it can be nerve-wracking going from a paid full-time job into the unknown. So can you just take us through like that process and what you were thinking and what sort of spurred you on to finally make that jump?
Shall I share what spurred us on, and you share how you felt about it? Because I think it's like a mixture. So I'd been in ministry, as I said, for I think 11 years at the time, and whilst the money coming in, like we didn't have, I think the most I'd earned while I was still working was probably around £1,000 a video, maybe slightly more. So it was really nice, like a subsidised, is that the word?
Like a top up.
Exactly, of like an income,
disposable income.
but like we weren't getting, because that's the weird thing as well, is like even now we've had months where you're like, wow, we've had like I think maybe like a 7 or 8 grand month, and then you have another month where you're like, we've earned £100. and so it's just the reality of it, especially within content creation. It's like Christmas can be busy, or certain times of the year can be busy, or even just randomly you have a random busy bit where you're like, wow, we've got 4 or 5 brand deals and they're each like £1 or 2 each or whatever, and then the next month like you don't get any. In fact, we didn't. I think October, November, December and things were like really quiet and stuff, and like what you're working out all those ways that you can have different income streams basically. But I think because of that, it was a nerve-wracking thing to think, are we ready to go for it full time? Like, because also I think like any self-employed job, it's a really weird one where you can almost always be doing something, yet at the same time you can also sometimes I feel like I'm working far more hours than I've ever worked, and other times I feel like I'm barely working. And sometimes even the times where I'm working the most are the times where I'm earning the least, and the times where I'm barely working are the times where I'm earning the most. It's just such a weird nature. And sometimes that might be content creation, that might be self-employment in general, and things, particularly if you're owed money and stuff, like you can have already done all the work, but you're like, still feel skint, even though we're owed a lot or whatever. And so it's all really weird. And I think all of that was like spinning around our minds with almost, do I ever go full time with content stuff? Because whilst I'm doing a video a day, like sometimes, whilst I think I've been able to improve the quality and regularity and the content and give it a bit more thought, the videos weren't taking that long to do. Like it was on my mind a bit and things, but it wasn't something where I think it was really detracting from my full-time job or my family or anything. If anything, it could be quite quick and easy at times. And so could I do both those things as a conversation? And then I think just mentally, I was really starting to struggle, and we realised that I had ADHD that hadn't been picked up on and hadn't been diagnosed. And so I think that without going too much into detail with that, but I read a thing the other day that said 35% of people with ADHD are self-employed by the time they're 30, which is obviously really high. That's like more than 1 in 3 people with ADHD. And so I thought, wow, like I don't know how many people over the age of 30 are self-employed in the general population, but I wouldn't think it's much more than 10% probably. And things, and so it felt like really high, and I think it's because I recognise that I'm very all or nothing. I'll either get, you sent me a meme earlier today that said there are 3 types of working days for people with ADHD. You get nothing done, you get a random 4 hours done at some random hour of the day. It might be when you first wake up, could be at between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. Or the third day is you get 40 hours worth of work done in one day. And it really is like that. And it was like that. And that's obviously quite a difficult skill set to bring to a team when you're not self-employed, but employed by a company or ministry or whatever, because people don't know what John they're going to get on what day. Like I might be either killing it or just struggling just so
waste
much.
The space.
Yeah.
Sat there, zoned out.
And so I think being able to make that, I went full time March 2023. Initially, from a kind of planned perspective, we were thinking January 2024, maybe.
And that's more because I was quite nervous about the prospect, because I like to know, I'm the kind of person I like to know what's coming in, and I like to plan, whereas when you're self-employed you can't always do that. And because neither of us had been in that kind of realm before, we were it was so new to us, wasn't it?
So it's almost, could we get, if we carried on with the salary from church, could we, if I could continue to perform really well there, but also get the odd brand deal and things here and there that would bump things up. If we could get 10 grand behind us or something, then that kind of means that's a good 4 months, really, realistically, probably, that would give us a buffer of, like, if we would be okay. We could pay our mortgage, we could look after our kids, etc., etc. And then basically I was just really struggling around Christmas time mentally. I thought, I wasn't sure, was it depression, was it anxiety? And now I think it was ADHD burnout of just juggling, not necessarily even juggling. I think it's
the right type of job for someone with your kind of ADHD, I don't think. You got overstimulated a lot in it, and that's something you can struggle with. And emotional regulation, like dysregulation. So you can either be really like feeling great, or you can all of a sudden just feel really low, and there's not really any reason. It's just you struggle to regulate your emotions. So I think there's just lots of different elements that you were finding it difficult in that job, because it was a very busy job and it was a very unpredictable job. There's a lot of last minute things of being part of ministry. And so you were finding that you were juggling, you were dropping balls because you just couldn't spread yourself.
And it's vocational as well, so you really care about the people, not only your team but also like the young people you're working with. So I think there was just a lot of like strain, and I think I always thought there was always a reason why I was struggling previously. I never thought it was ADHD. It was like, well, we've just made a big relocation from the south to the north, or
you've got 2 young kids, so we're not sleeping very
exactly, and additional struggles with you being paralysed. So there's an element of like
extra responsibility.
And so I think there was always a reason. And then when the reasons ran out, I was like, why am I still struggling?
And then I actually saw, I think on social media, I saw like a meme, or I saw something around ADHD, and I just was like, wow, this is John. Like, this is John. And the more I looked into it, I was like, you have ADHD. Like, I'm diagnosing you right now. Like, you are like, it was just crazy, wasn't it? And so we got you officially diagnosed.
And then I think I was hoping to return in kind of February, March time to work, and then I was able to get medication, but the way that kind of worked was that the medication, it was a trial and error situation. So I thought the second I've got it, I'll probably be good to return to work. And then they were like, actually, like every sort of month we'll change your dosage and stuff. And it got to the stage where I was like, I feel like this is just so unpredictable. Like if the team needs someone back in the youth worker role, and if I can't be back in that and going properly for it, I don't want to keep messing everybody about. And so I think we, as Christians, like we prayed about it, and it kind of felt something that was like, okay, let's try it at least, because if we don't try it, like I think we basically felt it was a door closing with ministry, because we had to, it was only fair to everyone that there was a definitive answer, and that felt the only definitive answer we could give, whilst also it felt like we'd been provided with other opportunities
this other door had opened
that at least could provide us with a livable income.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, I think it was a big leap of faith for sure, but I think also, I think advice I'd give to anyone thinking about making that jump is I'd be interested to know, and interested to know your guys' opinion as well. I think, like, I don't think you can, and I don't know if anyone ever really does this anyway, but I don't think you can go, I'm going to give up my job and become an artist. Right. Where are my paints and stuff? Like, I think it's always something that you've kind of been doing, or at least had a very strong interest in beforehand.
Yeah.
Most people I know have also managed to make some kind of money as a kind of side hustle before they've also then made the jump. So if you're a musician, they've already been doing guitar lessons in their free time for people, etc., and then they've decided, actually, maybe this is livable and might free me up to maybe enjoy life more or make more money, or there'll be some level of payoff that, and freedom, that full-time employment in a 9 to 5 doesn't give you. And yeah, that's what we've experienced massively, I think. And it's very up and down. Like, as I say, like, it's easy to, even for myself, it's easy to hear like, wow, £4,000 for one video. But again, if that's lovely, but if you get that once every 3 months, you're really struggling. So it's swings and roundabouts.
No, absolutely. No, that's amazing. So when you was going through like the anxiety of like going through the ministry, how did that affect you guys like as a couple? Because that must have been hard on like both of you.
Yeah, it was tough because I was trying to support John, but I didn't really know how to support him because he didn't know really why he was feeling the way he was feeling. And so for us, like, having the diagnosis gave a lot of clarity, and for me it helped me support John more, because I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it explains so much about little weird behaviours I thought you had, that I thought were like just Johnisms, or, you know, that's just John. Actually, no, this is why you do that. And I could like start to learn how to understand certain things about you and how your ADHD like manifests. And so for me, it's made me be a better partner to you, because actually I know now how to support you. But before I knew that, I didn't. And so it was quite hard, because if anyone's ever been part of a church or has like kind of a faith, when you're part of like a faith community, what's hard is it's when one of you's working for them as well, is it's your job, but it's also like our church family, and it's really hard when that line is blurred between employment and then also like spiritual family. So I found that really hard at times, because John would be very stressed at work, but on a Sunday I would be there and the kids would be there, and we would feel the stress coming off John, and that was impacting us as well. And so I'd say like those few months leading up to the point where you decided to step away from ministry was really difficult. But it showed me, I think I needed to see that, because it showed me that it just wasn't working. And that we needed to try something different, even though it was scary and it was a bit of a risk. It was like, well, the thing we're in right now isn't working, so we almost felt we're pushed to do it in a way, because we didn't see any other option. And sometimes I think that's what you need in life. It's only when you get to kind of like the end of your tether that you're like, okay, there's no other options here, I need to just make this jump, because I can't see any other way.
Wow.
You know, and our quality of life now is so much better. There is still that unpredictability that comes with self-employment. But I feel like John's mental health is in a much better place.
Amazing.
And it's so much more flexible as well, which is great, having a family, and he's around more for the kids, which is great.
I guess like content creation is a bit of like, I guess, an outlet for him as well.
Yes, like that creativity, like he loves to express himself, and so it really is like a way that he can channel that and get paid for it, which is like everyone's dream, good, isn't it? To do what you love and to get paid for it. You know, you can't ask for much more than that. And it's been great as well, because it's opened up other doors for us as well. Like we're writing a book at the moment that I don't think would have happened if the whole social media hadn't blown up.
Yeah.
we wouldn't get these opportunities. So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
really crazy to think like how your life can change so much within a short period of time,
Yeah.
just based off changing your job.
Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, so the title for it is Able to Laugh. And it's basically, the gist of it is it's questions that we regularly get asked on social media
Mhm.
about my disability, or about how we met, or how do you parent, how do you have kids if you're in a wheelchair. You know, there's lots of questions that people have. How do you, you know, how, as a Christian, how do you kind of come to terms with the fact that you're in a wheelchair and God hasn't healed you? You know, there's lots of things like that that people find interesting.
It's basically the story of Jade's life, how she became paralysed, and basically a narrative, an autobiography, basically. But each chapter is a different question that we're asked on social media that helps kind of bring out that narrative.
So there's lots of funny stories in there, lots of really embarrassing stories. But I'm like, I now know why I have so many embarrassing stories. It's to write a book. Like,
Absolutely.
really.
And I think people have really connected with that kind of. We've never had any complaints. So sometimes like the humour will be like quite dark around, and so even recently when it was snowing up here, we did a quick video where Jade was off camera, and I just said, "We've got to go back in a minute. My feet are freezing," and she went, "Oh, man up!" And I was like, "It's okay for you. You can't even feel your feet." And then pan to her in her wheelchair. So that kind of silly. That kind of like silly, funny stuff that we've never had any complaint from anyone in a wheelchair, because I think the reality, and one of the reasons the book's called Able to Laugh, is often the people who have been through the most are the people with the best sense of humour, or the people most confident in bantering around that stuff. And I think that
using humour to cope with difficult situations.
Yeah.
And normalise them as well. I think the reality is like when you laugh about the things that might make you different to other people, it removes the barrier of fear around that situation and actually allows people to laugh around that situation. And I think it puts everyone at ease with you more. And so and I think that we probably can all relate to areas of our life where we've done that in ourselves even. And we know how much warmer we feel towards people who do that, and how much I think it's some of the lovelier messages we get are around that normalizing of it, or young women in wheelchairs being like, "Oh, you guys give me hope I might find a relationship," or "I love the fact that you laugh about it as well, and so it makes me feel a bit better in my situation." And so it's been really nice. Like I've often said, like I think you're quite remarkable in how you've handled your disability, and that you've never really had mental health struggles as a result of it, particularly. And there's loads of things aside from paralysis, because one of the chapters in the book is something along the lines of, I guess your life, I guess at least things can't get any worse now. And then Jade's kind of gone, well, actually, and shared a whole load of stories of kind of sometimes becoming paralysed is just the start of it, because they're all kind of complications that can happen when you can't feel your legs. Like, so breaking your, if Jade breaks
your leg
leg
without realising
she
it.
can't feel it and things. So
And
all
Jade,
those kind of things.
I know you actually burnt your leg, didn't you?
I ironed my thighs and didn't realise till I moved the ironing board and saw my thighs were bubbling. Yeah, not great.
Oh my God.
So all sorts of things like that, I think, that are able to help people understand things. And whilst you can't, everyone's situation is different. It's just been nice to be able to, I guess, have that impact and help people. So really excited for that. And I think it's not a book that there'll be elements of sharing, I guess, your faith being one of the reasons that you've done so well, but it's not a book for people with disabilities, or not a book for Christians. It's just a book for anyone who's been through
life, isn't
anyone
it?
who's been through bad times, but recognises how important hope is, and laughter within that. So quite
That's
excited
amazing.
for that.
When's it available?
And we
This
think
autumn, isn't it?
I think it's out October, but with pre-orders available in the summer, hopefully. So just finishing the drafts.
That sounds amazing. Well done. I know you've done lots of typing and planning and working really hard behind the scenes. So well done, guys. We're looking forward to buying a copy and just supporting you. And thank you for sharing the story. Super powerful. I don't know who it's going to impact either.
No, definitely.
So we are looking at your social media. We can see you've got incredible followings on various platforms. And
Can we get some stats on your followings?
Yes, we should.
On each platform.
Yeah.
So I think I think TikTok's got 583,000.
Nice.
Facebook's got 233,000,
Wow.
and Instagram's got 109,000, I think.
Is that
Wow.
almost a million together? About that?
So yeah,
Yeah.
around I think low 900s, yeah, about 920 maybe in total, something like that. So
You'll be
yeah,
hitting a million this year.
excited, hopefully, yeah, we're really hoping
Yeah.
so. And again, like, you do have days where, I mean, just recently, in fact, like, my average on TikTok since we started was around sort of 20 to 30,000 followers a month would kind of come in.
Mhm.
And like November was like 4,000, December was like 3,000, January recently I was just losing followers and I had no idea why. So it's really hard sometimes, like when you just have those big peaks and troughs,
Yeah.
to not get your whole identity from how you're doing in work, which I think is hard for
Mhm.
any of us, whether you're
Mhm.
self-employed or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things like yeah, and I think even more so sometimes with like social media, because there's that element of like, if you're doing property things, it will really knock you maybe if you get a bad review, or if you're like in hospitality or whatever, that can knock you. And obviously that can be damaging if people are putting that stuff online maybe, or whatever, or bad mouthing you and things. I think with social media it's that weird thing where like everything you do, like your customers are anyone who stays and stuff, whereas like sometimes my customers are like anyone who sees it, and so it's like really weird where I'm like, did this make you laugh? And the people are like, no, and actually we're going, like, and stuff. And it's like that really weird thing of like, on the one hand it's not personal at all, because I haven't put the blood, sweat and tears maybe you guys will put into making the room look nice, or whatever, like any listeners as well, whatever your roles are and things. But on the other hand, like, it's also, yeah,
Well, it's part of your personality that you're
Yeah.
showing online that you
And I
kind of
guess-
feel rejected by if people are like, nah, I don't think you're funny.
Yeah,
You know?
I guess everyone works out of an overflow of who they are. So there's
Yeah.
always probably some element of anything feeling personal when you know you've actually worked hard on something and that's not been appreciated by the customer. But at the same time, it's very weird that the people. It's just very weird. The people who end up earning me money are not people who ever pay me any money. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's like really weird.
And what's the best way that people can support an influencer? What works? Is it a like? Is it a save? Is it a share?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really hard. I think it varies. I think the reality is the reality is really it has to be organic, to an extent, as in, I think call to actions are great. So I will say, if you like this, do follow for more. And there's a reason why YouTubers have got that, like, smash that like button, guys. Because people who do like it often just forget to actually click like.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, there's also a reason why, if I just paid people to like it, any growth you had would be really short lived, because it's not natural. Once you stop doing that, then suddenly it's not organic. So I think sharing things, if you like, the videos always do.
Because people forget to follow as well.
On some
particularly
platforms.
if you see people on your homepage a lot, so they naturally just come up because the algorithm knows that you like them.
Yeah.
You're not following them, then actually, like,
you can end up seeing a lot of videos from somebody and thinking, oh yeah, I love their stuff, but you're not actually following.
Yeah.
But I think also, like, sharing with somebody else you know would like their stuff. So if you have got a friend or family member who is doing social, and whatever that looks like as well, because I think any social media presence, there's a way of doing. I'm convinced there's probably a way of doing a video that would go viral no matter what your niche is or what your business is. It's difficult, and it needs to feel not like an ad, basically. There's an artist guy that I follow who's a genius at it, who sets up like a mixture of AI and like visual effects and things. And he'll basically do a video where he's like someone breaking into a house or whatever, and then as he gets in and opens the front door and stuff and takes the painting off, he takes off the mask or whatever, and he's like, by the way, I'm not actually breaking into this house, and this is one of my paintings. And it's like, clever. And then it all comes up and he's like, you can buy that now. And he does loads like that.
That's so good.
And I think, like, the reality is, and what brands ask for from us as well, is videos that don't look like adverts and stuff. Like, gone are the days where people are like, "Do you like water? Then buy this water," and things like. Because the second people see that, they're like, "Nah."
They click off.
Yeah, they don't want to feel like you're selling them something, because most people, I think social media is a little bit like walking through town, and you're not going into a shop, you're being accosted by the guys with like the perfume or whatever, and no one has gone into town for those guys.
No.
You might end up buying one, but you're not there for that.
Yeah.
And so when people go on social media, often they're not there to actually buy something. They're there to be entertained or catch up with friends or see what's trending or what's in the news. And so if you want to market yourself, I think it's doing things. It's doing like renovation or before and afters or anything like that make people want to. If people making people want to keep watching sort of every few seconds. If you can get people to watch the whole video, that will usually do well. Which sometimes means making them short and sharp. And I really struggle with that. Like, I struggle with like bringing things right down. Especially if I'm like, but it's a really funny moment with one of my kids, or it's a really good joke in that bit. But if I did cut that down, that could be 40 seconds gone. Like, it is really hard. I find that tough.
I feel like content creation's a bit like storytelling.
Definitely.
Yeah. So trying to hook them. Then if you are doing ads, it's all about, like, I guess, telling that story and trying to integrate that product into like whatever reel or TikTok you're creating. I wanted to know, like, how easy or hard is it to come up with like content to constantly keep producing? Because it must be a lot of pressure to like having to keep producing content in order to keep your followers happy, in order to grow.
Yeah, I think one of the things we found hardest is like, what actually are we as a as like
You don't just do one thing. Like, some people have their niche and they just keep replicating that, and it gets the views. Whereas, because we've shared so many different types of stories, either about our kids or around disability,
or we've done dark humour bits.
There's just so many things. Because we've got a lot of Christians who follow us, but we've also got a lot of people who aren't at all religious following us. So it's really hard actually to know what is our thing, isn't it?
Recently we realised that the kind of dark humour around disability was going well again for whatever reason. That kind of brought us out of a bit of a rut on TikTok. So we did a few more of those, and somebody was like, "Look, I know your wife is in on this, and I know that she's not offended, but I just feel unsettled with this, so I'm sorry, I'm going to unfollow." And I was like, it's actually a really nice way of saying that. And I was like, that's absolutely fine. Like, if you like, we'd never ask anyone to go against their own moral conscience. Like, don't assume that a few people being like, "This isn't funny." This isn't funny when, what did she say? This isn't funny, even if the victim is involved in it. This isn't funny. And I was like,
it's not a victim.
I was like, sorry, who's the victim? Like, and so, but people's mindsets, sometimes it does show you a little bit about what people are actually thinking, or their low view of people groups sometimes and things. So I think, sorry, remind me the question.
Well, I think you've answered that question really, really well. Just about content creation, how do you continue to please your audience? I had a question, and it was about looking forward, because I'm quite keen to know what's on the horizon for you guys, and what direction do you want to go in?
Yeah, so really interestingly, the guys who run my Facebook, so there's an agency who basically edit my videos now for Facebook. So I'll send them over the raw footage, but they do all the kind of editing and like marketing and stuff. They've recently said to me that they'd love to see more Christian sketches. So more things of like the kind of Christians you get at a prayer meeting, or like what people are like when they turn up late to church, or just various scenarios like that, or like, and so we're thinking of like I've done a little prayer sketch that's kind of like the waffler who just prays forever, or the gossip who isn't really praying, but they're just using it as an opportunity to talk about all the stuff they know about people.
I love that. Let's pray for Sandra and that terrible bunion she has.
Exactly.
And the fact she and her husband had an argument last night.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly. Yeah, Lord, we just lift Janice to you. As you know, she's going for a terrible divorce at the moment. Like, it's not common knowledge, but like that kind of thing. And so I think like things like that we're hoping We've not steered away from that intentionally, but we've just never wanted it to be a bait and switch of like,
Yeah.
for people who follow us who don't have a faith, we don't want to suddenly be like, now we're just going to tell you about the Lord or whatever.
Yeah.
People are like, whoa, leave me alone. Because that's the kind of thing, I only became a Christian when I was 17, and that's just the kind of thing that I would have just been like, okay, I'll unfollow this guy then. If it's all going to be a bit too preachy. So we don't want it to be that at all. But I think that's one thing we're trying to work out is like, how do we normalize disability? Because lots of people are affected by it. And how do we normalize faith where in a world where we completely agree that it's okay to believe whatever you believe, but at the same time, sometimes I think people who have a religious faith are kind of written off. I remember writing off people as just a bit weird if they had faith and stuff before I was a Christian myself. And things. And so knowing what it's like to be on both sides of that, thinking like that would be quite fun to do. And I think also the reality is whether you're trying to make it broad enough that anyone who's had any experience of church will get it. You don't have to still be going necessarily, or you don't have to have an active faith. But equally, how can you make comedy that's relatable? So the scenario might be church, but even if you don't go to church, everyone knows a gossip who's like, I'm only telling you, so do you know what I mean? I'm only telling you so you don't put your foot in it or whatever. I'm only telling you so you can be praying for them. And it's like, is that true, or are you just gossiping? So trying to make relatable stuff, I think, for everybody would be really is something that we're really sort of thinking about, I think, for the future.
Like numbers of followers, does that matter, or do you just go with the flow?
It's really hard to know, because I think I've definitely, there's an element where it is a meritocracy online, as in you won't, if I regularly did rubbish videos from now on, I probably wouldn't really grow. Yet at the same time, I could do, and I've had it before. Even I've had videos. I had a video on, it was Elijah's reaction to something, my 7-year-old's reaction, and it got like 5 million on Instagram, but like 10,000 on TikTok. Like TikTok just didn't care, and I tried reposting it, they just didn't care, and I don't know why. I don't know with the algorithm what it was. It just got nothing. If anything, it got worse than sort of my average views. But on Instagram, it just went crazy. And so every now and then you have one that does well on. I think I've had one or two that have done well on all three. But even that's encouraging. And I'd also encourage anybody who is toying with social media to try and have a presence on every platform, because you just never know, particularly Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, but I'd say particularly the really social ones. If you're not doing content creation, but it's a business that you're using social media to promote, because you just never know, and it can be really demoralising sometimes when you put a video out, then you're like, I'm really happy with this advert for my thing, and it gets nothing. But then you put it on something else, and you're like, I knew it was good, because then it does well on that one.
That must be rewarding.
And it's also a lesson learned of like, if it does do well on all three, okay, how can I analyse this? What did I do in this one that meant it did well in all of them? Or if it doesn't do well in all three, just because I thought it was good, the stats don't lie. What are the chances that my amazing video bombed on all three platforms? Maybe it wasn't as amazing as I thought it was. How do I rework this and stuff? So I think that's a really good way of going about it, I would say.
What would you say, like, the platform that gets you maybe the most brand deals?
That's a great question.
So really interesting. So brands love Instagram most. Apparently, as in, I think it's the one that most people are on, but I have had very, very little work for Instagram. All the work I've really had has been through TikTok. We've had the odd one where they want us to repurpose it. So can you do a TikTok but also an Instagram reel, like the same video but use both platforms? Instagram stories can be quite big as well. So sometimes people don't even want a video, they just want you to hop on your story because it feels very current and new.
I think as well, Instagram followers are more impressive than TikTok followers.
Yeah, I would say that it's harder to grow on Instagram than it is on TikTok. TikTok is very much outreach media, really. It is social, but like most of the time, so with over 500,000 followers, most of my videos still probably get between 50 and 100k views. Like most of your followers don't see most of what you do. Whereas I'd say that is true on Instagram, but I'd say on Instagram it's probably more 1 in 5, 1 in 4 usually see a reel, like, or the numbers seem to be that. Most of my reels kind of have 20 to 30 or so k views. So the numbers often aren't that dissimilar, even though there's 5 times more followers maybe on another platform. And so the brand deals that I've got have been predominantly through TikTok, because that's probably, maybe that's just because that's where I've grown most, but equally I think brands realise that because TikTok has that virability that maybe other content platforms don't, maybe my video will go big on TikTok and stuff like, and so it's potentially better for the brand. But I think long-term stuff, Instagram, like you'll see obviously celebrities or whatever, but they'll have a long-term deal with someone through Instagram because people will go there for that. And I think they feel like they know you a bit more through Instagram, probably because of picture posts, video posts, story posts. People are more likely to visit your grid, I think, probably on Instagram than they are maybe on TikTok. And go through your stuff and your videos, check out your stories, check out your highlights from your stories. I think
this is like training for how to become an influencer. I've been actually writing notes while you've been speaking, and as a content creator myself, but in a slightly different way. I'm like, oh, that will make a good reel. Ooh, snip that. Timestamp.
Yeah, definitely.
Is it okay if I ask a couple of questions to bring this round to land?
Of course.
A few thoughts to leave the listeners with. Is that okay?
Definitely.
So I'm keen to know, are there any brands you're willing or would like to really work with in the next 12 months?
Great question. So one of the most amazing experiences we had was we worked with Virgin Voyages Cruises, who had to pay for our flights to, it's amazing. We had to pay for our flights to Barcelona and insurance and things like that.
But then everything else.
But the cruise itself was gifted. And so we had to do, I think, 3 videos maybe, although we ended up doing 1 a day. And then I think 3 stories a day. So there'll be certain stipulations they'll give you. And I'd love to, it's one of the big things, obviously, with kids. I'd love to do either a Disney cruise or like Disney World with the kids. Like if there was that option to do that in a way that was like we made content for it. And I think we've been quite fortunate, because I think that we've, both for the kids, both quite like doing or being involved in videos. They've got
quite different personalities.
But they're 4 and 7, so they're still at that age where they're like almost inherently cute, because all kids of that age kind of are, or at least you can get a highlight reel of them being cute, even if they're not all the time. And I think also because of obviously accessibility things, we're able to also show brands like this is how good their accessibility was.
Their accessibility.
I think there's a part of us, whenever I've reached out to people, and sometimes you hear, sometimes you don't, but like I've often been like looking at those 2 angles of like and I think that's what I would say is like, what do you offer people? Like for anyone listening as well, like what is your area? Why would a brand want to work with you, basically? And so for us, it's kind of, we can show other families how good this is for families. We can show other wheelchair users how accessible this is for them. And we kind of tick both those boxes in one brand deal, rather than them needing to get a family and maybe a wheelchair user, if that's what they want to show. So I'd love to do that. Like, I think it's always hard with stuff like that, because like, sometimes it's just the things you use the most because you feel like you naturally promote them anyway. So like I drink a load of fizzy drinks and stuff. So like even just things like that, working with like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or whatever, where you're just like,
save us a lot of money.
Yeah, I just drink them anyway, and things like, so I think things like that. Have you got any? Chanel, she'd love a bag.
Designers, big designers don't do collabs because they don't need to. They've got
exactly.
But no, I'd love I should have been born into a rich family.
But I do think fashion, because like every now and then,
fast fashion do collabs, like Boohoo and all that kind of stuff.
But I even think like there's like basically we're more than happy to milk diversity for whatever we can milk it for. So every now and then it's like, have you got enough wheelchair user models? Because Jade will happily show off. She'll happily show off your gear.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. That's so good, amazing. Kafilat, have you got any questions? Because I want to finish with, do these guys have a favourite quote, something that's been helpful for them on their journey that we could put on the Instagram that maybe other people might find helpful as well?
No, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Is there any quotes that have helped you make the jump, or just kept you going, doing what you're doing, that's kept you motivated?
Oh, that's a good question.
There's a good question.
Or if you don't have a quote, feel free to make your own. So a little sentence that will motivate people to make the jump.
You're usually you usually have a lot of quotes. So you're quite, you've got the mind to retain that information.
John,
You always
just what
have-
John's thinking, he's very well read, John. He'll often quote things to me and Dave, and we're like, we can't even read picture books. John,
often against your will, whether you want to listen or not. He's got to tell you what's been reading.
Thing is, like, it's also, it's not often reading. I think if it interests me, I like retain it.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I'm kind of drawing a bit of a blank.
Okay, well, I'll change it then if that's easier. Feel free to give a piece of advice to someone who's sat here thinking, I think I've got good content and I want to make the jump.
Yeah, I think do what you love. I think mostly, like, because I think it's really easy to overthink, like, your audience and everything. Like, what do other people want to see?
What do they want from me?
But I think, like, for me, the biggest thing I imagine with, like, comedy stuff is, like, if I was sending this to a friend who I know has got a similar sense of humour to me or finds me funny, will they enjoy it? Because it's really easy to think, like, even with the wheelchair, like, dark humour stuff, like, there was a time when that was doing really well and we were like, we could probably just absolutely rinse this for all it's worth. And maybe some people will get bored, but actually it'll probably it's doing well, so why don't we just, that's all we'll do. But we both were chatting and it was like, but that's not what we want to do. Like, and so I would say, like, one quote actually, it's actually from the UK office, but Tim in the UK office at one point says it's better to be at the bottom of a ladder you want to climb than halfway up one you don't want to climb.
Oh, powerful.
And I think that's really good, because I think, like, we got to a stage where maybe we could have been halfway up a ladder that actually we're like, does that normalise disability, or is it just, it's not just cheap laughs if you do other things around that, if you show that Jade has a really witty and funny and intelligent personality and she's not just like the victim in a wheelchair or whatever and stuff, and the husband's just, why did he even marry her, he's so horrible all the time, and things like when you show more of that, then people are like, oh, okay, no, I feel safe, this is funny, I like these guys. It doesn't become a bit of a one-trick pony where it's just like the same catchphrase every time and people are bored of it. And so I think doing what you enjoy, because then you'll always enjoy it to some level, and things. I think if you're just trying to do it for everybody else, if you're just doing it if only you enjoy it, then it's probably not a job, it's a hobby. Like, if only you enjoy it, if not other people don't enjoy what you do, doesn't matter how much I enjoy playing football, if people aren't paying to come and watch me play football, I can't make it my job. So that, but at the same time, if only other people enjoy it and stuff, then you're just not going to be motivated to really do it for very long, and things. And so I think it's trying to find that sweet spot where you're where you're very gifted, or you're very, very enthused in an area. Can you monetize that? And if you can, smash it, and if you can't, it's just a hobby, basically.
Turns out you can. That's so helpful. I have loved chatting to you guys.
We've loved it too.
Oh, it's been great.
Me too.
So
Thank you,
encouraging,
guys.
so inspiring. Where can people keep in touch with you and follow your journey?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm John E.J. Reynolds on every platform. So the initials E and J in between John Reynolds, John E.J. Reynolds on every platform, basically. So if you look that up, you should be able to find me.
Nice.
That's amazing.
No, that's amazing. And if people want to connect with me, I'm Banjo Estates, Banjo, like the instrument, Estates, and you can follow us on Making the Jump Pod for to see little clips of this interview.
Absolutely. Nice. And if you want to follow me and my husband Dave on our journey from having an Airbnb in our house to starting our rent to serviced accommodation business, you can follow us at Abide Property Management. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on. We'll let you know.
Such a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Very best wishes to you both, and looking forward to chatting some more.
Nice. Yeah, it'd be lovely.
Cheers.
Thanks. Thank you.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.